The invention of the Jewish race, the recap. The idea of Jewishness as a race was invented deliberately, strategically, and with genocidal intent in the 19th century. The architect of this idea was not Hitler, not even Herzl. It was Moses Hess, the German philosopher who laid the ideological foundation for both Zionism and Nazism. Hess wasn't a religious Jew. He didn't practice Torah law, observe Jewish traditions, or identify with rabbinic teachings. What he did do was racialize Jewish identity, ripping it from its spiritual, Semitic, and linguistic roots, and rebranding it through the lens of German blood science. He called Judaism not a religion, but a nationality, then claimed that this nationality was bound by racial destiny. It was the construction of a supremacist ideology. He was building the framework for who would be allowed to call themselves a Jew and who would be discarded. In his 1862 book, Rome and Jerusalem, Hess wrote a manifesto that fused German racial mythology with a fabricated Jewish nationhood. He didn't define Jews by belief, tradition, or language, but by blood. He called for a return to a national homeland, for a purified race he claimed had been corrupted by exile, mixing, and weakness. In other words, he imported German race theory into Jewish skin. This racial ideology contradicted 2,000 years of Jewish diaspora. Judaism was never racially bound. It was a religion, a spiritual tradition practiced across diverse languages, geographies, and cultures: Arab, Persian, Berber, Kurdish, Iberian, and yes, European. But Hess's version of Jewishness had no place for the Semitic Jews of Palestine or Yemen, no room for the religious communities who rejected nationalism. His version was white, Germanic, and rooted in racial purity. In doing so, he created a new mythological identity, the Jewish race. Later figures like Arthur Ruppin would expand on this framework, importing eugenics into Zionist settlement policy and openly classifying Mizrahi and African Jews as racially inferior. Ruppin wasn't a fringe voice, he helped design the Zionist state. This racial logic didn't run parallel to Nazism, it became Nazism. The Zionist blueprint, laid out by Hess and Ruppin, was followed to the letter by German fascism. The funding networks, the racial science, the obsession with purity, land, and blood, it was the same doctrine under different flags. Nazism was a sister project, designed to wipe out the unwanted, erase resistance, and ultimately clear the path for a Zionist ethno-state dressed as survival. At the same time, Nazism claimed the Jewish race was impure, but crucially, it targeted the very same population Zionism sought to erase: Semitic, dark-skinned, non-European Jews. The Zionist elite, white, European, and nationalist, were never victims of Hitler's ideology. They were its partners. They operated from the same racial dominance, shared the same funding networks, and pushed the same goal: remove the undesirables, and construct a racial ethno-state. Zionists weren't the acceptable Jews. They were white European supremacists who hijacked Jewish identity to create a colonial outpost, Israel, as part of the same imperial framework that birthed Nazism. The whole conflict was a rigged dialectic, one side to persecute, one side to save. Both sides built to destroy the Semitic people who practiced the faith they stole. It was coordinated racial engineering. Nazism and Zionism both erased the religion of Judaism. Both turned identity into blood science, both weaponized Jewishness as a blade of obedience, and both were funded, protected, and legitimized by the same Western financial networks that created the dialectic. One side to persecute, one side to liberate, and both sides to eliminate the Semitic, anti-colonial, anti-racist, and anti-statist Jews who stood in the way. Zionism didn't protect Jews. It redefined them into a racialized, nationalized, European settler identity that had nothing to do with Torah, Semitic tradition, or religious continuity. It was the theft of a religion by a race cult, and that race cult would become the ideological bridge between the old colonial empires and the New World Order.